Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this edition of our webinar, where we are today with an eminent panel of academicians, academic administrators, and someone to represent the EdTech community. Today, what we essentially want to discuss, we want to really decode what EdTech is and where the future lies. During COVID, we saw EdTech became almost a household name. It was the buzzword. Uh, was it then a watershed movement or not? That's all what we want to find out today. And to discuss with me, I have a great panel. I have Dr. Ashwani Sharma, who is right now Director General for WIPS, and he was formerly DG NILIT. I have Professor Ayaz Moon. He's the Dean Research for IUST. I have Professor Rishi Bhardwaj. He is with Mahindra University. And I also have Mubin Masoodi, who is the co-founder for WiseApp, one of the very popular EdTech platforms. So welcome you all. And at the same time, I welcome the audience over here. My request to the audience is, if you have any questions, please send them to the Q&A tab, and we will be asking them to the panelists in due course of time. So starting with you, Dr. Ashwani, I wanted to understand, where are we today in terms of EdTech? And if I could also understand, what does EdTech mean?
So you're not audible.
See, the moment we talk about EdTech, it is very clear from that we are trying to put technology into the education system. We are trying to put technology to deliver education to the last mile or last milestone. The way we say e-governance, where the governance component is major, but we use technology, so we call e-governance. So it is just like a e-education, we can say. Now, as far as the EdTech part is concerned, it is also well known to all of us that there has been a edutech companies coming up in the market. There was a inclination. Another, I have applied to say that in 2012 itself, when I was DG with the government of India, we started using technology for delivering of courses and even for issuing the certificates. CCC certificates were delivered online to the more than almost 1 lakh participants. So there was a concept of using technology in the education sector, whether it is delivery of content, delivery of certificates, or delivery of lecture, whatever it is. But frankly, after the COVID, because COVID made us, all of us, dependent purely on technology, where there was no human connection was allowed, there was no context which were allowed to be there in the classrooms or in the education system. So we all started using technology, and that's the reason, if you see, I think India has now become number 1 or maybe number 2 in the edutech sector. And that's the reason major startups are coming up in edtech sector only. And that's the reason we target that we have more than 3 crore users of this edtech facilities, whether it is a content delivery, examination conduction, or skill development, whatever it is, but all through technology only. Even I am surprised, rather happy to say that now even practicals are being conducted online through simulators. That's the beauty of the system. And I have written an article in the Times of India where I said that in the times to come, it is possible that we'll have a education as a service, like information as a service, platform as a service, where you will be given freedom. A student will be given freedom to select teacher, select university, select the course basket, and do the graduation or post-graduation.
Oh, that would be interesting. Kind of ONDC for education. Interesting times ahead, and thanks for taking us through the introductions. Coming to you, Professor Moon, I wanted to understand, how do we see EdTech in higher education and essentially in the areas like research? What do you see EdTech playing as a role there?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, Mr. Kausa, for connecting me to this great panel. One thing we have to understand that, and I like to start in a lighter note, what is attributed to be said by Lord Buddha, that whatever goes up has to finally come down. And this is precisely, what happened to EduTech also. The kind of phenomenal rise that they had, it had to nosedive, unfortunately, and that's what we are witnessing. But I would tell you that, pandemic or no pandemic, online education and edtechs had to play their part in a country like India. I mean, look at the scale. A country of 1.30 billion population, over 1,000 universities, 50,000 colleges, 25 lakh schools, 30 crores of student base, of which 4 crore are studying in higher education. The question is, how can you not have a technology intervention if you want to democratize your education system? And that is precisely what was attempted by these edutech companies. And, talking of the specific role that these edutech companies played or played in past, as well, especially in higher education institutions, I would like to quote you what exactly happened in 2007. IIT Bombay came up with a very futuristic kind of a program, which was called Continuing Distance Engineering Education Program. It was pioneered by a group led by Professor Pathak, a very eminent professor and technocrat. Now, what they did under this program was to reach out to every engineering college, I think thousands of engineering colleges, and wherein they could bring in the live classroom experience of an IIT. Everybody wants to go to an IIT, but everybody cannot go to an IIT. Now the question was, how could an IIT experience be replicated in normal college or a normal engineering college? So this is what was exactly done by Professor Pathak and his group under Continuing Distance Engineering Education Program. They used a fantastic platform which was called A-View, which was developed by probably Amrita University. It was a virtual e-learning platform, which for the first time in the country harnessed the power of internet. I mean, it was operating on a multimodal mode, on a multimedia platform. And it was not only delivering the lectures, but they actually showed us how even assessments, could be done by giving small quizzes. The Akash became a household name those days, Akash tablets, which were supposed to cost 1,000 rupees or so. The Click application, which was launched for quick, which you see normally, which is being played by Amitabh Bachchan on his show, the Clicker application, when they do a quick audience poll. So all these things did happen, and this happened way back in 2007. And then what was important. What is important to understand, there's all these initiatives which were happening those days were predominantly government-driven initiatives. They were all done under the ambit of some flagship programs under Digital India or under National Mission on Education through ICT, NME, ICT, or even departmentally funded projects through SSA. And Dr. Ashwani will bear witness to one initiative which we did in Kashmir, which was to install smart classrooms in around 20,000 schools, remotely placed, in Kargil, Dras, Keren, and which gave us a first flavor of what an e-learning environment would be. Now, coming particularly to the research, research and innovation, they go now, hand in hand. It's not only research, it's innovation. Now, every university is rightly focusing on innovation so that it gets a proper recognition through various accrediting agencies, whether it is NAAC or NIRF. Now, for example, if you have every university needs a high computational framework or a platform for doing research in high-end areas, let's say image processing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, or cyber forensics, etc. Now, every university is not in a position to develop these high-end computational resources. That's where this technology, like cloud technology, is being leveraged so that a researcher can hooked on remotely to this facility which can come up in a university and then carry out research using his own limited platform, whatever he has. So, and then Dr. Ashwini also talked about, the flavor of conducting practicals remotely. You have these virtual labs, again, which are being networked through different educational missions. So overall, edutech companies and the technology is to stay, whether pandemic or not pandemic. I mean, that won't be an issue. Thank you.
Okay, great. So for research, particularly, I think technology is democratizing and decentralizing resources, which is helping everyone to carry out high quality research and maybe innovation as well. Coming to you, Mubin, you are an innovator yourself. You try to solve a very big problem of enabling education on a platform which leverages very less resources on the internet. So give us an understanding. We started with, such a big industry, which turned out to $1 billion in few years. And today we are talking about whether this industry is going to stay. We are talking about the financials of the industry. How do you see that side of, panning out?
Hey, hi, Faisal. Thank you for the opportunity. So I think it's fair at the same time unfair to look at EdTech just from the perspective of last 2-3 years. Because last 2-3 years was more of a time where people didn't have an option. There was not a choice. People had to teach online. So of course we saw a lot of people, everyone, universities, edtechs, private, public, everyone was teaching online. And now if we compare the scale of online education then and the scale of online education now, of course it's lesser. And we also usually get biased by, the large markets like the JEE, NEET prep or the school education K-12. And we look at numbers there. Because when you look at younger children who have an option, who have access to schools, who have access to offline coaching, there is obviously a preference for that. So that's why there's a decline in numbers. But what I see, from within the private sector, what I see is it's still growing, especially in avenues where learners do not have much choice. I'll give you an example. When it comes to reskilling, upskilling, or skilling of people in order to improve their employability, that market is just growing. If you look at the numbers right now, and even if you compare that to COVID, the numbers are far higher because their situation is similar to COVID. Just like in COVID, kids did not have an option to go to a physical center. People who are upskilling, reskilling themselves, they don't have an option to travel to a tier 1 city. They don't have an option because most of the time this reskilling is happening part-time in the evening, in the late hours after they're doing their day job. So I think we're still in early days for EdTech, but I see a lot of potential, especially around non-conventional education. What that means is I don't see music classes happening offline a lot going forward. I don't see a lot of yoga classes, for that matter, happening offline, or coding classes. Those things will happen online. Spoken English, which is a very big market. And another interesting market, as Indians grow up, as they grow farther and farther away from their culture, as we get more westernized, Indians are very insecure about their children losing touch with their cultural ethos. So another growing EdTech segment is religious classes, like Bhagavad Gita classes sell like hotcakes, and Bhagavad Gita will be taught online. It won't be taught offline. So I think it's still early days, and I'm very optimistic with regard to EdTech, how it's growing. But of course, if we compare K-12 during pandemic and K-12 now happening online, it seems like, oh, EdTech is finished. Conventional college degree courses happening online then and happening offline now looks very gloomy. But if you step back and look at it holistically, it's just continuing to grow, and there's no reason why it should not grow.
Okay, great. So what I could understand is probably, obviously EdTech is there, it will stay there, but it will keep on reorienting and repurposing itself with the, demand that is out there. And very interesting, points on essentially hobby learning and all those areas. I think that's really something interesting. I would probably want to learn some music from your platform soon. Coming to you, Dr. Ashwani, you are also an education, as an administrator in the domain of education. So want to understand from you, are we really prepared? Do we have all the ingredients in place that we can have a full-blown EdTech kind of, experience?
See, one thing is very clear that in the last 2-3 years, after the declaration of the NEP 2020, the mandate of government is very clear that yes, we have to go for use of technology. I mean, see, one is that whatever you want to do, until unless there is a mandate or there is a vision and thought process in the government, nothing roll out. Whatever we can do. For example, in the past, we were not allowed to go for online classes. Now there is a change in the system as per the NEP 2020. And as per the new regulations which are coming up daily, we are finding that the scope of the online classes has been increased from 20% to 30% to 40%. Now even Government of India is very clear and open to have 100% digital universities also. They are allowing online classes to first 100 universities in the country, which means there is a commitment, there is a vision, there is a thought process. Now, second important parameter, which is very much important for edutech companies, is the technology available in the country or the infrastructure ability in the country. Now, of course, I personally feel, this is my personal view, that we are still lagging in terms of infrastructure support, which is required for the delivery of the education to the students or to the learners, whether it is in the age of 60 or it is in the age of 20 or 18. Because the bandwidth, which is very important, although we are coming up with Bharat broadband and all these things, still it is not reaching to the panchayat, gram panchayat or whatever areas we are trying to bring the education system. Second is the availability of the power, which is very important, because when we are saying we are going to use the technology, I think there is no substitute to be one of the important ingredients for giving power to the equipments, electronic equipments. And moreover that is that we need to ensure that this education system becomes, through the edutech system, becomes affordable. None of the parents will be keen to see. If you see, we have got 3 crore students, whatever the number we encounter. Maybe I think hardly 10% may be in a position to send their student to a better schools or maybe highly paid schools. Otherwise, if they all try to send it to a medium school or maybe a low income school, because major constraint in the education system. Secondly, one thing is very clear, that the contents are also to be prepared to match the technology. See, we need to recast the content preparation also, because they are going to play a major role. For example, let's say dance classes, as we discussed just now, or somebody, I think Mubin mentioned, yes, dance classes are still happening online. I tell you, I am trying to learn music or dance for my son's marriage. I've been told by the teacher that I will teach you in online mode only, sir. I cannot come to you because for coming me, I have to waste almost 1 hour. For me, teaching will be 20 minutes class. So, I mean, concepts are changing, mindsets are changing. And finally, I have no option to say yes, other than to say yes. So, definitely, the contents of the education system have to change. Whether the, for example, let's say, if you see, when we conducted NEET, we conducted IT entrance, we conducted all CUD, that is all PG courses in the university admission.
I think we are losing Dr. Ashwani. I would.
Education has to change.
Okay, there was some disturbance in between, but I think we got a sense of what you were trying to say. Moving on to you, Professor Bhardwaj, I wanted to understand, you are, a professor, you are a teacher yourself, and you understand IT also very well. So what is your view on the current state of EdTech, and where do you see, it gelling with the existing education system?
I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
So what I would like to just add on to what Dr. Ashwani and Munsif and Mubin has said, that I was the first pass out in SIMAS's distance learning course in 2007. And that was my first exposure when I actually was exposed to this edutech, which actually I saw only in fiction. and maybe in few of the universities from my uncles in Western country. So today, the sea change which I look pre-COVID era and post-COVID era, the very few points which I have just noted down. The first point is accessibility, which again goes to penetration and economies. That do we have the ecosystem to support? And second thing, that do the users actually have affordability to use it? First of time, maybe having affordability awareness may not be there. Second thing, there is a large gap between should we go Edtech completely hybrid mode or should we go on full completely distance mode? So that time and space has to be managed. Many of the universities like IGNOU was there earlier, and I faced this in the beginning of my career that sometimes people do not accept certifications and degrees which are on distance mode. Now today when we are having this Edtech, the time and distance doesn't make any difference. But still people are having a secondary traditional doubt that would this particular degree be useful because you have done it on a WhatsApp university or a similar kind of mode. So that recognition from the government has to be enlarged. Companies have to come forward and corporate sector has to accept people that even people are, if not going extremely in the deep research where actual experiments are required, other fields should be accepted as a formal degree. And the last point which I would like to make up, that learning technology framework, that whatever technology we are having, is it effective enough? Like this session we are having, you are listening to me, some of you might be making a note and etc. But after this session is over, let's say there is an exam on this particular session, would you be able to recall everything? So today, the course maker, course designers are doing very hard work, but ending up on MCQs. So most of the generation is settling to MCQ, and MCQ system is having its own lacuna too. So all I'm suggesting that either perform or perish. I'm really fascinated by this technology of metaverse, which is now a very costly technology, but I'm thinking that in 3D mode, you cannot replace a person of physical mode into a virtual mode. We are not at that level of technologies. So even when I go to my AI labs and etc., things are there, but we are still very primitive and above all, Mahindra University is able to afford this expenditure. I wonder what other university might be able to do. So we need to work a lot on ecosystem first. Second, we need to have an awareness as well as acceptability from the governing point of view, the UGC, AICT, and everyone, that these certification would be valid and nobody would mock you that this certificate is from Edtech. And third part, to make our interaction more penetrative and accessibility should be increased, that we need to make it three-dimensional rather than speaking to the wall. However, it will take some time because that will be another wave. I don't keep my fingers crossed that there will be not another wave for next wave of Corona, but nobody can rule out the possibility. Biowar is completely common nowadays. So we need to be very careful about it before the next such kind of tragedy strikes. Do we have the alternative ready? Do we have the provisions in space or not? Otherwise, Edtech or any such kind of mode would continue in a hybrid mode, but cannot replace a full mode because people still have not the awareness and above all, not the acceptability by heart to take Edtech as a formal degree. That is my take, sir.
Okay, thanks for making us understand these nuances. Coming to you, Professor Moon.
Faisal, I will just before you take up the Dr. Moon, let me tell you that already Government of India UGC has issued the notification that courses conducted in online mode will be considered at par with the regular courses being conducted in the university. Already notification has come, I think, 4 days before, which is there on the website also, that now courses, diploma, degree, whatever we are doing in online mode, at par with the regular courses. So I mean, government is slowly moving, but I do appreciate what concern Professor Rishi Bhargava has raised. Yeah, please.
Yes, sir.
With your permission, Faisal, this is my humble request to Ashwani, sir. I would like to meet you in person someday, sir, rather than in online mode. But this is also my suggestion, that is, I'm really happy to hear the news that UGC has taken this formal initiative. But one more step I would like to suggest that can we have collusion or a combination of some big brands of companies also to sign that particular thing that we are ready to take it. Because many a time the government gives a notification in official gazette, but it sees a cold bag. At times people don't recognize it. So I want more initiative from the industry, and I hope government would be pulling some strings to bigger industrialists. I would say Mahindra could be one of the good player in picking this up. But I would suggest that government should also take more hands, more people on board from the industry who are ready to vouch for this particular UGC notification. This is my humble request from my side to Ashwini sir.
Yeah, absolutely. And adding to this, I think the issue is also with, like, for instance, the treatment we give to, say, open universities, while from government point of view, they are well recognized, but when it comes to employment and employability, we don't treat them at par. We have to be honest on that side. So that is an issue out there. And I think online also faces the similar kind of challenge out there. I remember many employers talking about, no, even if it should be on campus, because on campus itself is an experience, and that gains a lot. You get a lot of interpersonal skills and others, which probably, maybe we don't get through open universities and other such things. So moving on to you, Professor Moon, I wanted to understand from a university point of view, how are you integrating and looking at Edtech as an extension or integration of an infrastructure or process or system into the university, learning system?
I think we need to look at the problem that you've raised from two perspectives. One is how do you bridge the digital divide, which is not only occurring in the schools, but happens or manifests itself even at the university level. I mean, you have people who can afford a laptop. There are people who cannot. There are people who have the cell phones. There are others who cannot. There are people who have the cell phones but cannot afford to buy the bandwidth. I mean, it costs. I mean, it's not factored into their fee. It is over and above the tuition fee which they pay to the university. This is one aspect of it. That's where I think edutechs and others will have to adopt, some kind of a philanthropical approach. It should be taken as part of their corporate social responsibility, wherein they not only make profit or get into the profiteering mode, but also show the inclination to share their profits, to share their revenues with people, so that their own business expands. But second important point is to see the initiatives which the university has taken in light of NEP 2020. That's going to be the policy document which is going to stay now for the next decade or so, maybe more than that. And what does NEP 2020 say in this context? I mean, we know that it focuses on inclusivity, it focuses on having a holistic approach towards education in adopting a multidisciplinary, kind of an approach. But the question is, how do you achieve these targets? That's what is going to be the major challenge. And that's where, these edutech companies have to step in. Dr. Ashwini talked about the recent UGC guidelines which have come. And one important guideline is the establishment of a national digital university, which was not a concept, let's say, 4 or 5 years back. Even right now, universities are not allowed to take edutech companies on board for delivery of their courses and their programs. Now there has to be, a change in the regulation so that a university actually ties up with edutech companies, so that they can roll out their programs and their courses for a wider reach of audience. But some, for example, look at NEP, what it says when it comes to delivery or mode of education. It says that you have to have, you have to deliver the content in your local language or in your mother tongue language till 5th standard. Now, question is, suppose I'm a Kashmiri and I'm supposed to deliver a lecture in Kashmiri. I can speak, but I cannot write it on the board. I cannot write Kashmiri script because it has not been taught to me. Similarly, other people would be facing the same problem. Now, what is the solution? The solution is that you have to prepare content in the local language. And that's where EdTech should see for themselves a great opportunity when it comes to content development in the local language. That's going to open up the huge market. And also, assessment is one area wherein technology has to still make a lot of strides. Like it was rightly said by Professor Bhardwaj that we can take up exams, but what is the level of assessment? Can technology take up the assessment? As of now, no. I mean, we find very hard to assess when somebody appears in the online examination. I mean, at the most, you can check only MCQs, but you cannot go beyond that. You cannot assess, what kind of answers have been given in a descriptive mode. There are some other course corrections which need to be taken, from the EdTech point of view. I mean, they have. I'm sorry to say that they have not really been ethical in their practice. For example, the hiring spree that they went into, the kind of poaching that they did on human resource by grabbing, other teachers and colleagues from other companies. That was poaching which they indulged into. So they need to, get rid of these practices and try to play it in a very, very fair manner. And their word of caution for them would be that please don't attempt to replace the teacher. It is not technology or teacher. It is technology with the teacher. I mean, you have to equip the teacher with the technology so that he becomes a real agent of change when he's delivering lecture in the class. All these things have to be taken into consideration, if they have to survive, in the long run. Because if they eliminate the teacher, then they'll be eliminated by the system itself.
Okay, some good points coming in there, and essentially, looking at probably there's a framework which already NEP 2020 talks about, and most institutions would go by that. Mubin, coming to you now, I wanted to understand now there are a couple of aspects. I'm not sure how much you would agree on the CSR part talked by Professor Moon, but a couple of things are there. Now, there is a business model angle and there is a technology angle. Can you just give us some perspective into both? How do you see the business model as well as the technology evolving in the EdTech?
I think both go hand in hand, with regard to if you look at other industries as well, I think safe to say that we have seen innovation happening in two cases. A, when there's a lot of business, there's a lot of commerce around it, or B, when there's a full might of state, the full resources behind it. If we take example from India itself, if we talk of fintech, right? There were many players in fintech in India, but the true revolution happened when the government stepped in through NCPI, UPI, and now it seems like India is so far ahead when it comes to digital adoption around cashless transactions. But that happened when state came in, right? Private players were trying to solve it, there was a business angle to it, but only when the state came in. So I think when we look at, because again, education is a very critical industry, it's for the social upliftment of the country in general. Of course, I'll not say that I do not agree with CSR and all those things, keeping aside the profitability of these EdTechs, but let's say that was in place. But even if that happens, that would be a drop in the ocean, right? Because when we are talking of education, when we are talking of social mobility through education, I think it's where the state needs to step in, because that is why you see most of the schools, most of the universities still being run by state. We don't have much of private education in the country in terms of numbers. But having said that, I with regard to your question on technology, I think the state can figure out how to innovate there. But with regard to private players will only be able to innovate when there's a business aspect to it. Even speaking for myself, because we are a privately operated organization, and we have built a lot of cutting edge tools around the problems that are being discussed, like assessments, attention in live classes. which were like unheard of, like even 1 year ago or 2 years ago. And that is primarily being driven because we have a profit or a money incentive. Of course, if we were subsidized by the government, if we had the backing of the state or some other resources, we could have done it in a not-for-profit angle, like a lot of people do, right? Like Nandan Nilekani's organized, like the non-profit arm, like Diksha has done a lot of work with the government, right? Developed a lot of content that Professor Moon was talking of. There are players who work that way, and there are players like us who would work privately, who would work with other education providers, who would focus on empowering teachers. Because a bit of background about myself, I've been a teacher for past 10 years, and I also firmly believe that for EdTech to prosper, like the aim should not be to replace the teacher. The aim should be to empower the teacher. That is why the tools that we build are for, better assessments, easier assessments, better live classes, like figuring out which students are actually studying in the live class, which students are lagging behind, so that adequate interventions can be made. So yeah, so like the shorter version of it, I think for players like us, innovation will only come in when there's a business aspect to it. Otherwise, it's just not possible. And to remove the business aspect of it and just focus on innovation, that will only happen when the state is behind it, or some giant resources are behind it.
Okay, fair point.
Just quick point, Faisal, if you allow me. I mean, when association like NASSCOM, which is an umbrella association of all the major IT companies providing software services, when they do an assessment, and then when they reveal that only 8 to 10% of, let's say, technical force, particularly engineers, are employable or found employable by the industry. And what do? They blame the educational institutions for that, for their curriculum, for their delivery, for their hands-on, for their, for the different lack of, let's say, experiential learning, all such things. Now it's reverse happening. The content is being developed by the industry, and now it is being thrown at the educational institutions, right? The question is, does an educational institution have any stake when these edutech companies develop content which is meant for them? Now I believe the reverse blame game would happen. It will be the educational institutions which will actually start blaming the edutech companies that, look, what you're developing is not actually acceptable to us. Our learning outcomes are totally different from what actually we had conceived. That's why the educational institutions and the edutech companies have to be on the same platform when they tend to come up with any kind of product or a service delivery. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sure.
just like to add one minor point here. Like,
Yeah.
I think that it was very early during this webinar, someone made a point about the technology being decentralized. I think that is the advantage of that. Like even our platform, multiple other platforms, like they're like mostly plug and play now. Earlier, what used to happen was technology was expensive, hiring engineers was expensive, developing things was expensive. So, the core educators or academicians and the people who are developing these platforms, they were two independent thought process to it. They were never the same set of people or even in the same room. Now that technology is decentralized, a lot of things are plug and play. Now, academicians, professors, and even teachers like myself, like we can, the reason I can enter into EdTech is because technology is decentralized, right? 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if I would have tried to do something that I'm doing today, it was not possible. Like earlier, there were only technocrats or engineers who were responsible for EdTech. But now it's now most EdTechs or most of the innovation in EdTech, a lot of it is being driven by teachers, academicians. So I think that would bring in more relevance, as Professor Moon is saying, because right now there seems to be a lack of connection between what is being created and what is useful. But I think that will only improve as more and more teachers, educators, academicians venture into technology.
Sure. My question to you, Professor Bhardwaj, we talked about technology, we talked about business model, we talked about policy. I wanted to talk with you about the content side. Now, how do you see the content ecosystem developing? And as we were just discussing, Professor Moon was also highlighting about it, like there is no umbrella system which is looking at the kind of content, the quality of the content being generated, whether, it may be employable, from employability point of view, it may be really, really very pertinent. But is it somewhere, being checked out? And is there any kind of standardization being brought up there? Help us understand on that side, please.
If I look upon a few of the statements said by Moon sir, that is around 25, and at times really more than 50% of the workforce is unemployable. They are having the degrees, but they are not. And it's a real, I would say, national shame for us in a country like, which is growing like anything next to China, right? And when such a statement comes, it really feels embarrassing at times. So, but when we look at YouTube, and before my time, 2005, that was not there, but when we look at YouTube, so you may find almost every kind of technology, right from dissection of a frog to any kind of operations, rocket launch. People are learning to even make bombs, right? Everything is available, and such in sophisticated 3D way that you can feel it. So at such a time when these platforms like YouTube are available, many a time even my student feel like, sir, should I sit in the lecture today, or are you sending me some selected YouTube links so that I can refer to it and present the project tomorrow? So one thing I would like to underline here, that long back when I was in school, many of my teachers used to say, I'll say this in Hindi, I hope most of you would understand, ज्ञान बांटने से बढ़ता है, और अगर आपके पास ज्ञान बहुत ज्यादा है तो इट मीन्स आप अभी भी अज्ञानी हैं, क्योंकि ज्ञान का कोई एंड नहीं है. So the moment we watch, let's say I am producing a product and I watch a similar thing on YouTube, what the first thing I would do, I'll try to find mistakes in that product and I'll try to improvise that and put into my product. That is what competition gives us. That is what content is. But we can synergize both the contents. We can give courtesy, like in IPR and AI, I always do, that let's take one of the best from YouTube contents makers or anybody who is available in the market, and then we make a synergy on a national level, that these are the people who are contributing to it. Just recently, this responsible AI initiative by the government, in which they specifically asked for suggestions for AI policy of India by 30th of November, I sent some suggestion to them. Many of my students also contributed in that. So unless and until we keep on thinking that I am the only one who has this particular technology, so we'll keep on running below the radar of competition. If we really have to be a world-class technology maker, then certainly we need more collective intelligence rather than individual intelligence. And that would come only after when I see that my cup is half full. I need to learn more, and I need to reach to the people who actually have the best performances in the market. So when I watch the videos of this Khan sir and etc., Moon sir, I would like to update you that Madhya Pradesh government has recently taken an initiative to launch their engineering and medical courses also in the regional languages. And I really respect, a lot of respect to Russians, Chinese, and Japanese, that they simply say, bloody hell, I don't have to speak the English language. I would speak my own language. Hindi hai, hum watan hai, Hindostan hamara. That should be the pride of everyone. And when I say that in Hindi, it's not because I'm a North Indian. Any language, whether it's Kashmiri, Tamil, Telugu, they should be having, they are different universes. And one thing last I would like to add, Faisal, that irrespective to what extent of content we create still, I won't say the attachment. Let me simply ask you, if you'd like to say something very emotional to somebody, would you speak in English? Let's say speaking to your mama, conveying that, Mama, I want this, you'll say in Hindi, Urdu, or whatever language. So that attachment, that respect to the language of communication should be developed, which is completely discarded by every institution, that we just keep on colonizing that English is better than something else. We keep on forgetting our legacy. So it is also one of the ingredients I would like to put up, that other than increasing the content, we need to be very cautious about what are our legacies, what are our actual roots, tehzeeb, sanskar, whatever it is, so that we don't feel alienated by the technologies or the contents of the technology. We feel that Vasudev Kutumbakam is actually taking shape. So this is my humble suggestion. I hope someday it shall happen, because that is the rule of the universe. Survival of fittest. You perform or you perish. The nature doesn't take no for anything. But the point is, if we have to be a survivor, then we need to look for the positive aspects of other and don't feel any kind of negative about it. We should feel blessed that we got this information from somebody, even if that person is our enemy. We should be thankful. So more collaboration is needed on a national level. And from the government point of view, what is required, that like on university level, we are having UGCs and so many IQACs, internal quality cells. Similarly, there should be a common cell for a national body of content writers too. And the sooner we do it, the better we can take the market. I remember the quote of Dhirubhai Ambani. He used to say, you may not even have just one idea. You have to be fastest to implement that into the market if you have to be a leader in the market. And that is why Tesla is running like anything. They are working on eugenics and interstellar, and we are still fighting with the baby problems, right? So I hope I'm audible. There is electricity loss.
You are audible. You are audible. Thank you. Thank you for your views. I want to move on to Dr. Ashwani, and we'll wrap up the session. After that, I'll have a quick remarks for all the speakers. So one, there's a question from you from the audience, that with ecosystem, becoming an integral part of the economy, what are some of the key initiatives that government has taken to promote EdTech platforms? So that's a question for you, Dr. Ashwani, from the audience. And my question to you was, since you also represent a vocational institution right now, how is vocational institution or EdTech requirement in a vocational institution different from maybe the other educational institutions? You have to unmute yourself.
Faisal, whatever questions you have raised are very relevant in the present scenario. But by the way, I am not with the now Vocational Education Institute. It is an independent college with more than 8,000 students. Prior to this, I was the Vice Chancellor with Symbiosis Skill University at Pune. So coming to your last question, I will answer that way. That yes, definitely during the COVID, one thing has been taught to all of us, that we started going for vocational education also through use of technology. I mean, because during the lockdown, there was no physical interaction was allowed. You were not allowed to have practicals and hands-on. And without practicals and hands-on, skill can never come. I mean, you can't gain the skill which one has to obtain or gain in the market. So definitely, we have gone for a technology, and with the use of technology, we were able to perform practicals where students were shown that how practicals are happening, or even they were allowed to make changes through their own system, and they were able to do that part. So definitely technology has played a major role. There is no doubt on that part in performing the skill sets and skill tests also. And this is what even Mubin Saab, Moon Saab and Rishi Bharata Saab told, that now when we are talking about Industrial Revolution 4.0, we have to go for upskilling, unskilling and reskilling. These are the 3-4 phrases, words which are going on in the market. And I think definitely anyone who is in the age group of 50 and above, in case they want to continue further, they have to upskill themselves, either in use of technology, use of trends. Because now, we have been talking about AR, VR, we have been talking about AI, machine learning and all. So new concept is coming up in the market. At least those who are in the senior level, they need to understand what is the real implication, how they are being rolled out. So this technology is definitely going to play a major role in terms of upskilling or reskilling. So technology part. One thing is very important, that in last 2-3 years, of course, COVID has taught us many things, but besides COVID, now Government of India and even the state governments are also very open on use of technology. As I said in the beginning itself, now Government of India is even thinking of having a digital university in the country, which means all classes will be broadcasted 100% through a TV channel or maybe whatever channel system they will follow. By the way, I am also a committee member on behalf of AICT in the Digital University Committee, and they are talking about delivering of course content to students, because the basic aim of the government is that the gross enrollment ratio, which is hardly almost 25% has to go up to 55% in next 10 years. For school education or college education, that it is to be delivered or imparted through internet or through technology only. Now, secondly, we are also working, even Government of India has come out with new initiatives, as Dr. Rishi Bharadwaj said, that they have allowed that, they have made, translators which are converting English-based professional courses and books into local language books or local language course content. So that is happening, and that will help us, in rollout of the education system at professional level, in professional colleges, maybe medical. Like for example, MP government has made one of the college where the education for doctors will be given in Hindi only. Similarly, there are many medical colleges, engineering colleges, which are coming up in South and maybe in Rajasthan also, where they will be taught subject in Rajasthani or maybe Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, whatever it is. So, and it is a fact that mother language is most closest to the heart. So, Government of India has already taken an initiative to make it more comfortable for others to understand. Now, the most important aspect which we need to understand, all of us, all those who are in the panel or those who are the listeners, that technology can work as a media to deliver the education to the last milestone, to the student or the learner. But definitely, as Mr. Moon said, the major role is the course content designing, planning. Because if you see the YouTube, which Dr. Rishi Bharadwaj also referred, I think many course content are not correct. They make the contents available on the YouTube, but if you go into the deep, you will find technology-wise, academically, they are not the sound, because you cannot have a replacement of the teacher. Because teachers, they have gone through the system, they understand what is to be taught to the student, what is to be taught in the beginning, what is to be taught in the end, how to make the student to understand a subject. So I think somewhere both the technology partner and those who are with the technology background and those from the academic background, they have to both collaborate, combine together, start working. And that's the reason, as on date, the demand of professors or faculty members who do have a tech companies now. There's a scene which is going on, because both have to collaborate and deliver the product to the best to the student.
Sure. Sir, starting with you, where do you see, if we have to measure the maturity of EdTech in India on a scale of, say, 1 to 10, 10 being the best, so where do you rate it right now in India?
I will rate around 4 only.
4. Okay. Coming on to you, Professor Moon, your concluding remarks, and how would you rate EdTech in India right now?
Well, I think I'm not in a position to really, rate them because just 1.5 years back, it was supposed to be the sunshining sector of IT industry, IT industry basket. And today we are hearing some disturbing trends. The recession, the pouching which is happening, the plummet of, their stocks in the markets, all these things are disturbing. But, what has to be understood is that the technology sector grew, and what was the success story behind it? It was the youth-driven sector. It is still a youth-driven sector. India as a country has a huge demographic dividend, advantage when we say that around 800 million of our population is around 35 years of age. Now, this is the sector which was actually targeting this 800 million of population. So as long as it keeps them in good humor and it delivers for this, huge chunk of population, which we call as millennial, then this sector will again grow like a sunrise, sector. Government also needs to step in. When I say step in, I don't want government to act as a regulator. Government should act only as a facilitator. I mean, we have India has a beautiful story which it showcases to the world, which is related to the IT, and it came because of NASSCOM. And what did NASSCOM people tell the government? They told the government that please leave this thing to us. You be there as a facilitator. Don't indulge into what we are doing. And then the success story emerged out of it. The same thing would apply here also. And most of these edutechs have to really emerge as good startups. I mean, all the success stories in India are coming through startups. At the moment, there are around 25,000 startups, of which 4,500 are these startups which belong to edutech sector only. There are 108 unicorns which have been already produced by the country. I mean, edutech like Byju's, which was like a jewel in the crown, that already, was turning out over $10 billion, dollars worth of business. The question is, why did it go to the recession? Why is it laying off people? Why is it recording now a loss of 2,500 crores? I mean, that's a very serious worry for the entire country. So, but I see, considering the size of the market that we have, the diversity that we have, edutech has a great future.
Thank you. Mubin, where do you rate it, and your concluding remarks?
Like it's obviously difficult to rate in terms. I think we're still like I can't put a number to it, but yeah, we're fairly early, like below 5 for sure. But I think my concluding remarks like would be we see like edtech. A lot of people see edtech as a replacement for conventional education, teachers and professors. And then as a result, there's like huge expectations of it. It's like supposed to solve everything. It's like it's supposed to make our world 10x better. It's not that. Tech is just something which is there to, at a very simple level, just solve two problems. A, to solve the problem of access for people who can't access education. It is for them. Two, to remove the inefficiencies that are there in education, just like that are there in any other industry because of lack of usage of technology or lack of penetration of technology to that level. I think at a very simple level, it's just these two things. Once we start glamorizing it, that it is there to solve everything, like just change the world where we see it, like, of course, our expectations increase and questions and other things also increase. So yeah, so that's just my take. Like it's just to solve for inefficiencies and the problem of access.
Sure. Professor Bharadwaj, over to you.
Right, I'll just summarize the things which I said in the beginning. And again, I'm saying that Dr. Ashwini has rightly said UGC has released this, but I would be expecting more corporate to vouch for it. I hope it will be done. This has to happen, otherwise we won't survive in the global market. But the point is, we must not forget our legacy, that content is the most important part, more important than the technologies. People were there around the world before the invasions started from different countries, that Patliputra, Shaolin or Dharamshala, whatever it had, history is full of that. So point is, unless and until we are not making our content so effective and so good, the student would run after you like anything. If we are keep on providing the very same thing with the every next person is providing, then certainly there won't be anything good and they won't be having interest. Let me just point out in few moments, few things like Avengers and DC movies are there. They are there only for the special effects, or are they there for storyline too? They make a person believe out of the box, and let it be fiction. Our Vedic texts are also full of Hanuman and these stories, and a lot of things need to be explored. So I would just point out Moon Sirs, he said in the beginning about Buddha, that it's a very rightly, unless and until I do not know myself, I won't be able to know the world better. But we need to find a balance in between. That content has to be the first, technology will take its own pace, and above at the last, that we need to create a synergy among the experts. Unless and until we are not having the good expert at the top, if the brain is not working well, the rest of the body of the country won't work well. And that synergy we need to create.
Sure. Sorry, there is one person from the audience wanting to ask something.
Yes.
Just allowing. Yeah.
Yeah, please ask.
Yeah, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Shahana. I am a doctoral scholar of social marketing. My question is, in the dialogue of EdTech, I would like to know some of your views regarding the EdTech reach to the last mile, to the vulnerable population, to the far-flung areas, which, to women who can't even afford a smartphone, where the internet connectivity, the phone connectivity is poor, which is a huge chunk actually of population in a country like India. what role is EdTech doing there, or what the strategies we can have for reaching them? Also, I think that more or less you have captured that point regarding the content and inclusiveness and synergy between various stakeholders of EdTech to make EdTech adaptive and accepted. Still, I find as a mother also of 2 kids, I find that there's a motivation problem for EdTech. How to keep the child motivated, how to keep the student motivated, how to keep the teacher motivated, So just few, words from you on this, thank you. That's it.
Who would like
Any-
to answer it? I think Mubin.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can like 2 very different questions. One is the last one. Again, I don't really think like that's a question directed towards like EdTech in general. Like that's more of a question on the infrastructure. Like if a person does not have a phone or does not have access to phone, it's also very difficult for them to call for an ambulance, which is like a far bigger problem than learning or education. So I think that's an infrastructure problem. Like 6 years ago, 7 years ago, if we had this conversation, like EdTech was like, if we're rating it 4 right now, we'd have rated -10 then, because there was no geo. Like what a lot of people underestimate, like the most, especially to the private part of it, the biggest thing that has happened for EdTech in India in the past 5-10 years is not actually COVID, it's actually geo, like the 4G internet that started. So I think that's an infrastructure problem, and that's a macro problem, which is a function of the state of the economy, state of growth, policies of the government. I don't think like EdTech companies can only create solutions which work. Like they can, if internet connectivity is not there, they can create pen drives, distribute content. But then if they distribute pen drives, where are the laptops, right? Like then the state gets involved. I remember at one time UP government distributed laptops. So I'm not even sure how effective that was or not. Just saying that as an example. So I think that's like a broad problem, and it would be like unfair if we make EdTech companies or EdTech sector in general accountable for that. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say for the first question. Second question, if anyone else wants to take.
All right, I'll just understand if my interpretation is correct regarding Shahana. Shahana, first of all, we need to understand that you're working in social marketing and social media. We need to understand, irrespective whatever level of technology we achieve or attain to, first of all, we are not machine, we are social machines. So no level of technology can replace a human emotion. That is the first part. And second thing, which Mobin has rightly pointed out, that it is an ecosystem and infrastructure problem that shall take time. 10 years ago, we could not even imagine any kind of geo, leave apart the 6G or 5G, we didn't even have 2G. So it will take time, but it will take a gradual course on its own. But last point I would like to make, where your point is being heard, that are we the part of the problem or are we the part of the solution? That is the first thing we need to look for. If we are looking only for the problems, we shall keep on adding up more problems. So if you have certain issues that in case something which are not addressable, there's always a platform. We always write to the government, nearest the DM could be approached to. They may not be able to solve it independently or immediately, but certainly they can push that problem to the higher authorities. It is a red tapeism, bureaucracy, whatever you call it, but until and unless we are not having a more transparent system put by the government, these issues shall surface at least for coming 5 to 10 years.
Just like to add one, to the second part of the question.
Sure, please go.
Yeah, with regard to there are actually a bunch of tools out there for teacher engagement, student engagement, which actually make live classes online education very, very interesting. So there are if you you can read up about them online.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Just Faisal,
Munsa.
Would like to quickly react to what has been already said, and rightly so. We have to understand that EduTech actually falls into the pie of IT software services, component. Though it involves system integration, but I would primarily define it as a service industry. I mean, it's there for service. And if you develop a service and how it would reach to the masses is through a proper bandwagon. You have to create that bandwagon. And that's what was being referred to by Mubin, that you need to have an infrastructure. Now, it's not that government has shut its eyes on that account. I mean, there have been number of multiple initiatives, for example, BharatNet or National Knowledge Network or InflipNet. These have been the basic or major infrastructural projects which were rolled out under a Digital India, program as core or mission mode project. So once, a person who is at the block level, who is at the panchayat level, even he has to have, he is to be provided with a reliable bandwidth of not less than 2 Mbps or 10 Mbps, so that this service rollout becomes very effective and efficient. So that's where even state governments need to step in. I mean, each state government has only one, centralized kind of a facility which is called State Services Delivery Gateway, SSDG. Now, this State Services Delivery Gateway or service that needs to be taken beyond, the headquarters, beyond the cities, and it has to be got incorporated or instituted at TASI level also, so that it's able to cater to the vast rural population, whether you have internet or you don't have internet.
Okay, thank you. I think that's also a valid point out there. With that, we reach to the end of this session, and in fact, we have extended a bit, overshot our time. Honestly, at the beginning of it, I was thinking we may not have enough to talk, but I am myself surprised that we spent quite of a time and had really great inputs and insights coming from all of you. And I think we were able to holistically cover all of what it is within EdTech. And thank you, audience, also for being with us and being somewhere interactive. Also, we had some questions from a few of you. Well, to end, I feel while EdTech has created unicorns, and that's where we started probably realizing there is something like EdTech, but I think we are also heading towards maybe now unique crowns, where EdTech will create universities with crowns and jewels. And that's probably the future of EdTech we are heading towards. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today, and we'll be soon with another webinar on another interesting technology topic. Thanks a lot.